Why is Joe Biden leading Donald Trump in the polls? Because he's a man. Biden, that is. I'm Scott Ott, and this episode of Bill Whittle Now is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And Bill, an op-ed writer, Peter Beinart, over at the New York Times, has this thesis in today's. I'm sure you've heard the name. And anyway, Peter's thesis is that Donald Trump has a net approval rating right now of -15. In other words, if you subtract the disapprove from approve, you wind up with a -15. But that's actually better than he had for all of the 2016 presidential campaign. Joe Biden's at a -1, but in 2016, at this same time, Hillary Clinton was at a -17. And the upshot of it is, in this column, Bill, and I want to get your reaction to this just off the top, and then we'll ply into some details. But the upshot of it is that the reason why Biden's doing so well is because Hillary was a woman and he's not.
Oh, for God's sake. Really?
I'm just saying what Peter Beinart is saying in the New York Times.
Well, that just more evidence, as if more evidence was needed that anybody can say anything in the New York Times. Writing for the New York Times now is where you go if you can't get a job at the National Enquirer. Hillary Clinton had a -17 or whatever it was because Hillary Clinton was clearly one of the most unlikable people in the history of politics. Ha ha ha! Kind of.
Well, he mentions this, Bill, but he says that that's just evidence of the misogyny of the American electorate, specifically Democrats. He says that there's good reason to believe that that her being a woman had a lot to do with that. In fact, not only was she unpopular, but she was far more unpopular than any Democratic presidential nominee since 1992. So isn't that because she's a girl?
Well, first of all, 1992 is not 7,000 years of history. 92, let's see, 96, 2004. So what? That's 6 election cycles. This is simply ridiculous. It's an absurd statement. I misspoke when I said earlier that she's one of the most unpopular women, or she's one of the most unpopular, disagreeable individuals that anyone has ever encountered as a general rule. There's nothing about her to like, nothing. And as the campaign went on, her personality began to come through more and more, and you get the whole box of deplorables and you know, all the rest of this stuff. And as people got to know her better, her numbers continued to go down. Now, Joe Biden's numbers are still pretty good because he was vice president under Obama. Obama remains a popular president for reasons that are beyond me, but nevertheless, it's the case. Joe Biden, as vice president, basically got to ride the fact that nothing particularly catastrophic happened during the Obama administration, other than 8 years of lost economic growth and an appalling deterioration in race relations from the one individual who could have actually put that away forever. But Biden, as vice president, is standing behind and beside Obama, smiling. And that's about all people know about Joe. But they're going to learn a lot more about Joe Biden as the campaign begins. And what they're going to see is going to lower their numbers. Joe Biden's net negative is going to go way, way up. To say that this is somehow misogynistic, that, I just didn't like Hillary because she's a woman. No, I didn't hate Hillary because she's a woman. I hate Hillary because I thought Hillary is one of the worst people that ever lived in terms of ethics, morals, power hungry, greedy, nasty, inhuman, intolerant, arrogant, person who simply just wouldn't, what was that joke from, I want to say it was from like 2008 or something, that her titanium hull was getting a personality upgrade. The whole idea is just ridiculous on its face, Scotty.
So this is interesting because a lot of Beinart's assumption is not just plain old garden variety misogyny, but that the truthfulness of the candidates plays into this as well, and that voters in general and politicians in particular tend to evaluate women as less having less integrity than men. A couple of examples he gives. He said days before the 2016 election, despite the fact that, the Washington Post, since Donald Trump's election, has documented some 20,000 false statements that he has allegedly made. Days before the 2016 election, though, the American electorate in a survey deemed Hillary Clinton less truthful than Donald Trump. And right now, Joe Biden is plus 12 when it comes to truthfulness over Trump. But the interesting thing is, PolitiFact, which is part of the Poynter Institute, that's allegedly a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that documents assertions that presidents and candidates make, says that Hillary is actually documented to be far more truthful than Trump and more truthful than Joe Biden. And that's the key, because I don't expect you to buy that Trump versus Hillary thing. But the interesting thing I thought was that the folks at PolitiFact say that Hillary Clinton was actually deemed by voters to be more honest, deemed by actual statements to be more honest than Joe Biden is, but he's way up in truthfulness and she was way down.
When we talk about these negative numbers and Donald Trump being negative 15 or whatever, and Hillary being negative 17, the thing that nobody can ever forget is you have to think about the headwind that Republicans fly into. Hillary Clinton committed major felonies. There's no question about it. By not turning in all of her records, that's a felony. Didn't matter if they were classified. Didn't matter if it just period. If there were emails that were still in her possession after she left the office, then that's a felony. And if she tried to tamper with or erase any of them, that's a second felony. So what is basically going on here is that Donald Trump may be, when I say wrong, I mean probably just boastful or overselling things, but he's not wrong about felony obstruction of justice on his part. So to say that Hillary has a more trustworthy rating than Donald Trump or Joe Biden is to say that Hillary may not have been lying about or may not have been as incorrect about as many things, but the things she was incorrect about were monumental. So if you want to say that Hillary Clinton had a negative 17 in 2016 and Donald Trump's carrying negative 15 now, I would just ask people watching this to keep in mind what those scores would be in a fair press, forget a Republican press, but in a fair press where Republicans and Democrats were covered to the same degree, then the numbers would be Hillary would be down 40 and Trump would be down 5. And to say that this has got something to do with her being a woman is another example of how out of touch and out of tune and just plain blind the New York Times is.
Well, I don't know if we should damn the entire New York Times. After all, it's just an op-ed and it's just Peter Beinart. But there was a study that he points out in his article in 2010 by 2 Yale researchers. And what they found in their study was that for some reason, people tend to view ambitious women with feelings of moral outrage, whereas when they come across an ambitious man, they tend to be less negative about that and just kind of assume that, well, you got to be ambitious to do what you're doing. And he highlights the fact that even Betsy Warren, Elizabeth Warren, was rated by PolitiFact as being more honest, but she's less trusted than Bernie Sanders, who's less honest, but more trusted. Do you think there's nothing at all to this thing that where voters kind of are biased against females and attribute to them bad motives or dishonesty when in fact they, in the large part, are more honest?
On the larger issue of how aggressive and ambitious women are perceived relative to aggressive and ambitious men, there is definitely something there. That is a real thing. And that is something that plays against female politicians. But when you apply that to these specific individuals, you are making the assumption that that is the reason for their failure or their low scores or whatever. Elizabeth Warren, the Native American who used her Indian heritage to get into Harvard, get a teaching position at Harvard. Elizabeth Warren is also an exceedingly unpopular, unpleasant person. She may not be as abrasive as Hillary, but again, who could be?
But the point of this is she tells the truth, but people don't trust her. Not as much as Bernie Sanders, who doesn't tell the truth as much.
They don't trust her because again, they seem to be qualifying trust based on the quantity of falsehood. When it's actually more of a quality of falsehood kind of thing. If this business about her lying about being an American Indian to get this position is a sign of untrustworthiness, and doubling down on it to say, well, I just had my DNA tested and it turns out that I am in fact Indian. I'm 1,026th part Indian, which means she is one of the least Indian people in the United States population. Doubling down on it is a sign of covering your tracks. It's a sign of admitting that you were wrong and continuing to lie about it there as well. The reason that Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump may have higher, I'm not saying they have net or actual higher scores than the women, but that they may skew higher than the two women you mentioned, is because Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump both have a reputation for saying things that are unpopular. And saying things that are unpopular, when they're measuring trustworthiness, all they're doing is they're counting the demerits. Oh, Trump was wrong 20,000 times. He was incorrect about this. But trust is not necessarily based on how many falsehoods you utter, or even the degree of them, because there is another side to the pan on trustworthiness. There's the downside. Well, that wasn't true, or Donald Trump got the color of the state flag of Ghana wrong.
So it's like a woman saying, "Well, my husband has always told me the truth, except for that one time when he cheated on me."
Well, yeah. Well, what I'm trying to say, Scott, is
that overshadows it all.
You can measure all of the falsehoods and say that this person has issued more falsehoods than that person, and yet they're trusted more, therefore. But there's a flip side to the downside, and the flip side to the downside is the upside, and that is, how do people perceive them in terms of truthfulness? Okay, so Donald Trump made a statement that was not factually correct, but Donald Trump makes repeated statements that go directly against the political headwind current in this country, and that means that his supporters find him to be fundamentally trustworthy because he is saying things that most everybody know is true, and no one else has the courage to say them. That is an enormously heavy weight on the other side of the pen. Bernie Sanders, although I disagree with everything he says, is also staking out a pretty unpopular position. It's certainly a controversial one. And Bernie Sanders has a reputation for saying what he believes and continuing to say what he believes. And this quality, Donald Trump saying what he believes, make America great again, and Bernie Sanders saying what he believes, let's make America a socialist S-hole again, or for the first time, these are qualities that people associate with fundamental honesty. And neither Hillary Clinton nor Elizabeth Warren ever approached that level of open honesty. Hillary Clinton, as an example, I'm against gay marriage, while the polls were showing that most Americans were against gay marriage. And then when they showed that balance had tipped, now all of a sudden she's not only pro-gay marriage, whoever she's running against is homophobic. And the same is true for Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren may have indeed believed in her, I don't know how many, I know there were 17 points that Wilson had for the Versailles Treaty. I think if I remember correctly, Elizabeth Warren was running on 193 points or something of all the things that she was going to do when she was elected president. But none of those were stand-up, bold, statements. Now, another person I don't particularly care for, but who did do the kind of thing I just mentioned is Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke basically said, "Oh yeah, we're coming after your guns. I'm not going to play that game like, no, we're not really after your guns. We just want to cut back. No, we're going to come and we're going to take your guns away." I think that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. But it increased his credibility and his perceived truthfulness because it was a very bold declaration of what a lot of people believe, and it was a bold admission of what virtually all conservatives know, which is they say they're not coming after the guns, but yes, they are. So when a guy like Beto O'Rourke makes a statement that is that definitive and that inalterable, there's no spinning. Yes, we're coming after your guns. You can't spin that. That increases people's credibility. So again, the New York Times further beclowns itself by attributing to misogyny on a statistical base of 4 people, by attributing to misogyny what is easily and certainly truthfully much more explainable by individual quirks and personalities among the 4 people that we mentioned. Donald Trump, 5. 4.5. Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton, and what remains of Joe Biden.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're grateful you've taken the opportunity to watch this program. We invite you to share it with other people. Subscribe on YouTube by hitting that little Liberty bell so that you'll get notifications for that. Better yet, go to BillWhittle.com. We'll provide a link in the description below and find out what it's like to be a member at BillWhittle.com, to tap into a whole network of constitutional conservatives, some of whom will become lifelong friends, become part of the member blog, which you can not only read, but write and engage in vigorous comments in the comments section away from the toxic sewer of social media. You can do that right now by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking the big green Become a Member button. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.